We've just a week to go now before we're live on stage with the new show, Cocaine Cowboys. Final tickets on sale for Limerick, Cork and Dublin from mcd.ie, our venues. You've had a bad morning.
I haven't had a great morning anyway.
Yeah. What occurred?
Well, a minor coffee incident, so I was in the lift and one started spilling and then I tilted my body to rescue the day.
You're in a kind of round of coffees.
I'm stuck in a coffee cartel, it's actually called, isn't it? It's other people have described it as a toxic, codependent coffee relationship.
Well, do you see, the problem is then when you want to just grab one and you can't, and you've all the bags and everything. And so anyway, you've upended it on yourself.
Yes.
And also you're fussing.
I'm fussing about the show, aren't I?
Yeah. You actually
in your opinion.
Yeah.
Let's categorise that.
Well, I arrived in here to find Dara smiling, saying to me, Niall has requested a meeting. And I said, about what? And he said, about the show. And I said, well, why, what's wrong? And he said, I don't know. And I don't know why you requested.
Well, there's records now. It's like EncroChat. There is records of you fussing me about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Live on air saying, why aren't you worried about the show? What have you done on the show?
Yeah.
And so as it gets closer, I get fussier.
And Saturday night, of course, we kick off in Limerick.
You do. And as it gets closer, you get less fussy.
Yeah, I do.
For some bizarre reason.
I feel prepared.
Yeah.
But you just want to, are you going to feel like you want to go sleep again?
Something like that. Well, all eyes are on me anyway, Nicola. You have to remember that. You're only a sideshow.
It's really your show, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
I let it say Nicola Talent,
Have you worked out what you're going to wear? Not that jumper anyway?
No, not this jumper, no. I'm going to
give you a t-shirt.
Yeah, but I might wear, I might buy a shirt even. I'm considering buying a shirt.
Are you?
Considering.
Okay. So it'll be fun.
It'll be fun. Possibly.
And we're in Cork on Thursday and we're in the Olympia on
Sunday night.
Sunday the 18th.
Sunday the 18th.
Yeah, which is, that's the big one when you walk out and you see that. I
haven't had some sort of fussy coronary.
Keep you on the coffees until then.
Yeah.
But you walk out and you see that giant, theatre and...
it's incredible.
I do get a moment there when I go, oh.
Yeah, it is incredible. It's an incredible feeling going out there, isn't it? It's surreal,
Well, the weight of the whole thing is on Ian.
Yeah, it's all great. If it goes wrong, he gets the blame.
Well, if it goes wrong, we'll drag him out by his ankles onto the stage and introduce him to the audience.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. So where do we start with Liam Byrne?
Well, it was the anniversary this week of the Regency. If you remember the first couple of anniversaries, they were big security events, actually, in terms of the guards, had to step up patrols. There was really a sense of, because of the nature of the feud at that stage, that this was a sparking point, or it could be a potential sparking point. But it passes, to a degree, the passage of time has meant it's, the 8-year anniversary, is it?
It's actually hard to believe.
Yeah, it is. It is hard to believe. And, it's a much more subdued event. But still... So
David Byrne's sisters attended the site of the old Regency Hotel, which is now Bonington, out on the airport road. And they attached flowers to the side of it to remember their brother. But within those floral tributes was a note from Liam Byrne, remembering his beloved younger brother.
And it reads, David, my baby brother, I love and miss you so much, your bro Liam. Obviously Liam is currently in prison in the UK awaiting charges in relation to a gun and ammunition charges and a conspiracy charge as well. So, 8 years ago, we, of course, Liam Byrne was pictured widely coming out of the Regency Hotel, if you remember, looking obviously distraught at what had happened to his brother. He was accompanied by a number of other people, including his own cousin Liam Rowe. Sean McGovern was carried out of the Regency after suffering a gunshot wound, a non-fatal gunshot wound. And obviously Daniel Kinahan had fled the building earlier on. 8 years later, we're still writing about a lot of these people.
So much has happened. There's been this sort of massive investigation, obviously, into both sides, the Hutch organised crime group and the Kinahan organised crime group, of course, which the Byrnes would have been the Dublin branch of. But they have been hardest hit, the Byrnes, no matter what. I mean, you know, what was a hugely powerful entity working out of Crumlin, Drimnagh, and, you know, was seen as the most powerful drug gang in the country, has been disseminated completely.
It has. I mean, it absolutely. And if you look at all of those names of all of those people there, you know, the Byrne clan, if you want to separate that, are, you know, really not in a good position, where the Kinahans, that Kinahan wing, you know, they remain free and out and about. I mean, obviously they're the focus of investigations. But it's interesting, 8 years on, I mean, Sean McGovern carried out with a gunshot wound, and again, his name crops up again in a court case this week. A guy called Michael Crotty is on trial, or was on trial, facing for a conspiracy charge in relation to the murder of Noel Duca Kirwan. He had pled not guilty, basically, to facilitating this murder. During the evidence, there was an initial stream of evidence because he had pled not guilty, and Sean McGovern's name was mentioned as somebody who he'd been in touch with to basically to buy him credit. Terrible thing to get caught at, really.
Buying credit for a phone.
Yeah, if that was. So ultimately, there was a whole stream of evidence was heard.
I called this.
You called it a whole stream of evidence, including, you know, the charge was facilitating the Kinahan cartel, effectively, or the Kinahan gang as an organised crime group, as it's referred to by the guards. So in order to prove that charge, the guards had to give the detail of what they believe legally the Kinahan organisation is. They also had to give the evidence of how this man was guilty, Mr. Crotty, and that included, obviously, phone contact with Sean McGovern. Ultimately,
McGovern, of course, is in Dubai.
He's in Dubai.
Kicking back out there, but he's feeling the pressure. Arrest warrant was issued in relation to him. He is wanted here on charges of murdering Noel Duca Kirwan.
Yeah.
And I think things have been moving really in the last couple of months since we entered 2024. A number of Gardaí from the Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau have based themselves out in Dubai.
Yep.
Obviously, Justice Minister Helen McEntee has been negotiating some sort of an extradition treaty in the background, and Drew Harris, the Garda chief, last year went out to visit Dubai police. So you can feel things finally moving, and I think McGovern is certainly of the opinion that he's going to be the first they'll go for.
Yes.
And almost it'll be a test case to see if we can get him back.
Exactly. And so he would have known from for a couple of years now that he was a wanted man, and there's an extradition warrant for his arrest. However, up until recently, he won't have known sort of any specific details because Michael Crotty pled not guilty. Some of that evidence is read out in open court, and now he will be a bit more aware of what he may face, certainly in relation to the alleged murder of his alleged role in the murder of Noel Duca Kirwan. So, I mean, Mr. Crotty has pled guilty now, and he'd be sentenced as a result.
Sometimes with these cases, and especially when you're dealing with organised crime groups, what they do is a fishing expedition within the court system. I mean, you know, when you look at the plot to kill Gary Hanley, which resulted in a number of people before the courts, including Luke Wilson, you saw in that case that Liam Brannigan pleaded not guilty. And there was a little bit of evidence suggesting that he was in contact with Daniel Kinahan around the time. There was some recordings from the car in which he spoke to whoever he was in the car with. I can't remember exact detail of it, but he was talking about speaking to Dee, and that Dee had said this, and that Dee was sort of anxious to know how this plot to kill was going. And of course, him pleading not guilty and there being a trial saw that evidence come out, which would have been very useful to Daniel Kinahan to know what maybe the cops had on him back here. So I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that organised crime groups, so sophisticated that they are, will sort of do this as a matter of course.
Well, I mean, the classic one is, have you got your book of evidence? Well, then you have to hand it over. So, I mean, that's been going on since year dot. What happens to people that are charged with criminal offences? There's always suspicion. There's always rats, as they say. And what happens even in the prison system is once the accused, gets their book of evidence, they have to hand it over to their boss higher up to see what they have said, what they haven't said. I mean, this is, I suppose, something equivalent to that. Handing over the book of evidence has been, it's always a way, and we've heard loads of tales about people ripping pages out of their own book of evidence and then handing it over where they might have been indiscreet during a Garda interview or various things like that. So Sean McGovern, who was a key incident on that Regency Hotel 8 years ago, he's still there. David Byrne obviously is currently behind bars, but I suppose the investigation into the Regency murder of David Byrne still does go on.
That's what I was going to say. Is it actively going on in the background still? Because, of course, we covered the trial of the monk last year and he walked free from the Special Criminal Court, which was unusual in itself. But he was found not guilty. The evidence was not there, according to Justice Tara Burns, that he was the shooter at the Regency, which is what the state accused him of. But, there was a fallout from that. It was a huge embarrassment to the state, to the DPP for taking the charges, for the amount of sort of effort that went into extraditing Hutch back from Spain, and such a significant figure as him sort of beating the system didn't really cover the state in glory. I wondered, had they the wherewithal to go at it again, go at that Regency. I mean, that's the second trial that has collapsed essentially on them. The first being the charge that was levelled against Patrick Hutch Jr. And because of some situations outside the control of anybody really, that case, the state entered a nolle prosequi. Are they still going at it?
Well, I think if Gerry Hutch had been found guilty and the evidence of Jonathan Dowdall had been less disastrous, I think you would have seen the state recall Jonathan Dowdall again. You heard a lot of detailed evidence, even during the trial that we just went through, Gerry Hutch's trial, about the movements of other people on the days surrounding the Regency, about CCTV of people, their movements. I think the value of Jonathan Dowdall as a witness. And remember, of course, Gerry Hutch was charged without Jonathan Dowdall's involvement. But as you saw, the state has, or the case as presented by the state, Jonathan Dowdall filled up little gaps, didn't he? He filled up little gaps to say, you have this CCTV evidence, and he was able to give a.
But they were massive gaps, were they not? And is that not what the judgment was? The massive gaps were that they really had. What did they have on Hutch, bar when Jonathan Dowdall went state witness? He gave two pieces of evidence. One, that he had handed him a key card for the Regency Hotel, and the second, that he'd met him in a park in the aftermath, and that Hutch had admitted that he had done the Regency. Neither of which pieces of evidence were believed by the judges at the court. But outside of that, you see, we forget. Outside of that, what was the evidence against Hutch?
The evidence was the
circumstantial.
The recorded conversations, I suppose. Both conversations there was two key bits of evidence. Jonathan Dowdall's evidence, which was a disaster, and although I think as part of his deal, he made a commitment to return to courts for other people. There's just no way.
Who's going to want him? There's no way.
No way the state are ever going to bring him back. And I'd say ultimately, if it hadn't been a disaster, he would have been brought back to fill in gaps, which is what they wanted to use him for in the Gerry Hutch case, where Gerry Hutch is clearly on the tapes talking about the Regency, talking about the movement of weapons, and they wanted to use Jonathan Dowdall to say, and he also did this and this, and it filled in gaps to make up a murder charge. I think the likelihood of anybody ever facing a flat murder charge, in my opinion, are very, very unlikely. Now, you see as we just spoke about Michael Crotty, where you have these facilitation charges, whether some of those...
Which obviously carry lesser sentences.
They carry far lesser sentences. But, whether it'd be surprising if they were brought now. There is evidence there because we know that has been detailed in open court. I don't know, but I do know there is still an active investigation.
As part of the judgment, though, I think Justice Byrne suggested that, had she not been considering a clear murder charge. Had there been other charges brought, I mean, there was no doubt, but the monk was close to the firearms as they were trying to get rid of them, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think also there was this looming presence of his brother Patsy throughout the trial, and his closeness to those weapons, those AK-47s, as they were planning to move them back up to the north and hand them over to some dissidents as a sweetener or whatever it was. It was never really quite properly explained. But I mean, in the background, are they still actively trying to bring charges against some of those people who would have been... I mean, the entire, Regency hit team as such was named during the course of the trial. Yeah. I mean, we were able to work out exactly who was who.
Yeah, and I mean, there have been arrests and charges not brought. I mean, it seems hard to believe that some new evidence could come to light. I think the Jonathan Dowdall fiasco has really put a dent in any future plans. But like the wheels of justice grind slowly, and sometimes they're mysterious, aren't they?
Like, I mean, like in 8 years, we go back to how we started here today. 8 years ago, David Byrne was murdered. Obviously, he will never be forgotten by his family, his mother and father, his sisters and his brother, and the tragedy and violence of his death that day. But that moment just created such a ripple. I mean, it has engaged the forces of the state in a sort of almost a learning curve in law enforcement. It has actually resulted in Europe coming together like never before.
Yeah. And the US and a sort of unprecedented international police cooperation. It has been incredible what that moment led to. Like, there is no doubt about it that European police forces are just simply interacting in a different way than they did. And the role of the Kinahan cartel and the investigation into them certainly has seemed to have played a role in that. I mean, the idea that the US government at a high level will become involved in Irish gangland, it would have been a bizarre notion, would it not?
Yeah, no, I mean...
If you look back on that day when we got that call that this shooting has gone ahead, if I'd said, in a few years now you'll have the US government holding a press conference in Dublin about this, like, it just wouldn't have seemed
But
credible.
You talk about that day and the call from our colleague Ernie Leslie, who was there and who photographed 2 men running from the scene with guns, a photograph which caused a whole lot of trouble for a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think everyone knew that moment was significant, the chaos around it, the absolute, in the immediate aftermath between crime journalists, cops, gangsters, everyone knew this was something outside anything that had happened before.
And it happened, of course, in and around the general election, which made it a huge issue in terms of the political implications of it. Like, obviously, they've been discussed in various ways by various conspiracy theorists in the aftermath. But it's a sort of a watershed moment, I think, in Irish life. We had them before, of course, but mostly they were to do with the armed struggle of Republicans, really. I mean, there was these moments before.
And I suppose the murder of Veronica Guerin was the kind of most recent to that. I remember being up in a hotel in South County Dublin, having a cup of coffee in the aftermath of the Regency, and there were these very posh golfers who'd come in off a course, and they were sitting having their steak lunch and their pints, and I was sort of half listening into them, and they started to discuss those Kinahans.
Yeah.
And that's the moment I think I realised the Kinahans had come off the pages of the tabloid newspapers and they had gone into the national psyche, that they, people had sat up and taken notice.
I remember a picture of Daniel Kinahan being on the Late Late Show in a discussion, and just remembering...
He wasn't on the Late Late Show, obviously.
No, a picture of him. But I
clarify that.
Not long before battling to get him named in connection with drug dealing in the Sunday World, battling with lawyers and everybody to say, is this safe? And then in a very short space of time, he's on the Late Late, which, of course, as you know from being on the Late Late, they are really careful for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Like,
And then he went, I suppose, from the national conscience to international conscience in a very short space of time with his boxing. But look, hopefully we'll have some developments in all of that over the next couple of weeks or certainly month. And hopefully I won't be off on holidays.
Hopefully.
Actually, I have a few plans. So
Do you?
Great.
Well,
right.
Hopefully I survive my stress-induced coronary.
You'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. Okay, Niall, thanks.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.